it's Hannah, and I'm so excited to do some art with you today. This is our very first time doing messy art together. Art can always get kind of messy, but this kind of painting is especially messy. This week we're talking about an artist named Jackson Pollock, and he had a special way of creating his art. He would lay the canvas or the paper on the floor, and he would use his paintbrushes to splatter, splatter, splatter paint all over. Sometimes he would even swing the cans of paint over the top of his painting, and it would splatter down that way. That probably made a pretty big mess, right? Throwing paint around can be really messy. So we're going to make sure that we set ourselves up for success today by laying something down to do our painting on top of. So you might have a tarp in the garage or an old bed sheet or a blanket. I have an old tapestry that I use for whenever I'm going to do a paint project. I also find that when we're going to do messy paint, it's sometimes nice to put our paper inside of a plastic bin. I'll show you the whole setup in just a little bit. So that way you're covered, you can get as messy as you want without destroying anything. My number one tip for painting like Jackson Pollock is this: go outside and stay out there and bring some wipes with you because your hands might get messy too. But before we get started painting, I'm going to share with you a story today. This book is called Jackson Pollock Splashed Paint and Wasn't Sorry. So this is what we're going to read today about our artist Jackson Pollock, and then we'll get started splattering some paint ourselves. Jackson Pollock splashed paint and wasn't sorry. These shoes belong to Jackson Pollock. Jackson Pollock was a painter. He was born in the Wild West of the United States more than 100 years ago. After growing up surrounded by nature, he moved to New York City to study art. Jackson was 18. It was in this great city that Jackson met Lee and Peggy. Lee was a fellow artist who later became Jackson's wife. Peggy was an important lady who collected Jackson's paintings, exhibited them at her gallery, and helped him sell them too. Here they all are. After a few years in the city, Jackson and Lee moved to a farm in the countryside. There, Jackson found the peace and inspiration he needed to experiment with a new way of painting. Jackson didn't like standing in front of an easel with a brush and a palette. When he painted, he moved. He would paint and move and paint. How did he do that? Did he paint while turning somersaults? Or while running across the canvas? Maybe he painted while riding a bike with his brush in hand. Or while dancing the boogie woogie. Could he have painted while climbing the Rocky Mountains? Or gliding through the air on a parachute? What about painting while swimming in a river? Well, he didn't quite paint in those ways, though he probably would have enjoyed trying. Jackson actually painted by walking around a huge canvas that was spread out on the floor. Sometimes he painted in drips. Sometimes he painted while whirling his arms around. He splashed paint using brushes, sticks, and spoons, or poured it straight out of a can. Jackson was careful with his drips and splashes, making sure the paint landed exactly where he wanted. He painted with the energy and grace of a dancer. He painted with rhythm and order, concentrating on every movement until the very last drop of paint fell on the canvas. It's finished. Jackson was unlike any other painter. He did things his own way with drips, splashes, and movement, and he wasn't sorry. Some people did not like his paintings, others did not understand them, but Jackson couldn't paint in any other way. When he painted, his heart would beat like a drum and he would not stay still. People soon began to understand his work, and some even tried painting the same way that he did. His artworks became famous and now they hang in museums around the world. Jackson, you did it. That's the end. Did you all like that book? I really like that too. It's kind of silly. So here's the deal. We have to gather all of our supplies and bring them outside, because remember my #1 tip for painting like Jackson Pollock? Go outside. All right, so I'm gonna share with you what I'm using, and then you can look around your house and decide what you'd like to use. Paintbrushes are fine. Like we talked about, that's what Jackson Pollock used to splash paint, but I find that some kitchen tools are actually really fun to paint this way with as well. So I grabbed this little brush that Mom might use for cooking, or Dad, and this whisk that Mom or Dad might use for cooking in the kitchen, or even you, and also a fork, 3 kitchen tools. And I'm going to pour my paint into a cup so that I'm able to dip my paintbrushes down and then splat, splat, splat. All right, my friends, so once you've gathered up all your things, let's go outside and get set up. Okay, my fellow artists, I'm outside and I'm ready to get started. I'm gonna show you my setup, and then I'll show you how I create some splatter paint like Jackson Pollock. Okay, here we go. It's pretty hot outside, so I am trying to find myself a little shaded space to do my painting. I have my tools here, my 2 colors of paint that I chose, and my papers are set inside of a bin. If you make some splashes and splatters outside of the bins, that's just fine. But we probably shouldn't throw any paint places they're not meant to be, like on our house or on our porch. Stick to the lawn or the driveway. All right, are you guys ready to get started? Here we go. Did you know that artists name their paintings when they're finished? This painting by Jackson Pollock is called Lavender Mist. Do you think you could come up with a name for your painting today? I really look forward to hearing about it. Get started on your own Jackson Pollock style painting. I can't wait to see how your splatter paint turns out. Don't forget to ask Mom or Dad to take a picture of your artwork to send to me so I can see what you've been working on, and try to come up with a title of your painting just like I did. All right, I look forward to seeing you next week, and have a lot of fun making a mess and creating some beautiful art. Bye, friends.